Ugh, coffee is so good. What's good, everybody? Happy New Year if you don't think it's too late to wish people Happy New Year. Welcome back to this tiny little corner of the internet. My name is Marcello. I talk about books, mostly with a focus on 90s middle grade fiction, at least so far. And today we are recapping and reviewing The Alien, the 8th book in K.A. Applegate's Animorphs series. I'm sorry that this one's coming out so late. Honestly, the holiday season was really difficult for us. The whole house was sick. My baby was sick. I was sick. My wife was sick. Kind of like intermittently, so we took turns. So like the sickness lasted much longer than it would have. I still haven't seen my siblings for Christmas, just to give you an idea, because we had to cancel Christmas because they were sick, and then we had to cancel our rescheduled Christmas day because we were sick, and well, we've had to cancel it again. It was supposed to be today because it is snowing pretty bad out. We got about 8 inches here yesterday. With that in mind, I am very sorry for the background noise. It's not going to go away. We've got all of our neighbors with the snow blowers and the little plows and the shoveling and everything going on right now. But in the spirit of trying to be more productive and actually get content out, I am not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I am not going to wait for it to be perfectly silent to record this video. If you would rather that I wait, if this is really terrible and bothersome, leave a comment and let me know, and I'll start letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Presuming you think these videos are good. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's do this. Also, one more ramble. Brief life and channel update is going to happen after the regular video here. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, stay tuned. Okay, so we're talking about The Alien. Like I said, it's the 8th book in the Animorphs series. This is the first book narrated by Axe, everyone's favorite resident Andalite. The outside cover quote is, "He's only human when he wants to be." And the inside cover quote is, "Look who's talking," which I suppose must be a reference to the fact that Axe is endlessly fascinated by mouth sounds while in human morph. Some trivia for this book is that it is the first one to have a shiny dark color around the Animorphs logo, as well as the first book to have a human morph on the cover. I guess it does have a little shiny dark thing around the Animorphs logo. This one has it too. Maybe these aren't first editions. Who knows? I'm just reading what it says on Seropedia. That's where I got a lot of those trivia from. So, first book to have a human morph on the cover, and this is also the first official illustration of an Andalite. Given that this is our first view into Axe's mind, we got a lot of firsts in this novel, so I will try to point them out as we encounter them in the plot. With that said, let's get started. This book opens with a prologue, something atypical for the Animorphs novels, and we get a glimpse into Axe's pre-Animorph life. Axe is on an Andalite dome ship with Elfangor heading towards Earth, and we get to witness some of the dynamic between Axe and Elfangor. It seems that Axe is a little bit of a goofball, while Elfangor is more serious and reserved, although they do seem very comfortable and respectful of one another. As the ship cruises towards Earth, a Yeerk ship is spotted in orbit around the planet, which quickly deploys bug fighters. The Andalite dome ship replies in kind, with Elfangor suiting up as he orders Axe to get to the ship's dome, which we will recall from the message is a large grassy plain, a facsimile of the Andalite homeworld. I'm gonna put this down. I am Italian, so I need both hands to talk adequately. So, deploying fighters, Axe wants to fight as well. He's frustrated that he can't do so as he is only an Arith, I'm still a little congested, the Andalite version of a warrior cadet. Axe and Elfangor touch tail blades before parting ways, with Axe deferring to Elfangor as his prince before telling him to go burn some slugs. On Seropedia, this is actually listed as a goof since slugs are earth creatures, but in my mind this is just a translation. I don't think the Andalites are thinking in English when they use thought speak. Slug is a pretty general term for many different species here on Earth. In my headcanon, they must have just translated this for the books, and this is just the most appropriate word, so we're going to accept it and move on. Axe is alone in the dome of the ship. He's the only non-warrior present when Visser 3's blade ship appears and fires on the dome ship. Dome ships have the ability to separate the dome from the rest of the ship, and the Andalites do so here in order to improve their maneuverability against the smaller and more nimble blade ship. As the dome separates, Axe is forced to watch, alone in the dome, as the blade ship fires on and destroys the dome ship. As the ship explodes, its shockwave hits the dome, knocking it out of orbit and sending it careening towards Earth, where, as we know, it lands in the ocean and sinks to the bottom of the sea. The prologue ends with Axe vowing to kill Visser 3, something that will be a core part of his character and internal conflict for the rest of the series. So now we're into chapter 1, and this book begins each chapter with excerpts from Axe's Earth Diary, something we haven't seen before and something which we do not see in any other book. It's mostly inane and somewhat humorous observations about humans. I'll point out if anything interesting pops up in any of the entries. I've already written the script, and I know that I don't point anything out, so my assumption is that it's not very interesting. Comment and let me know that I'm wrong if I'm wrong. Anyway, chapter Chapter 1. My name is Axe. The Yeerks are invading. You guys know the drill at this point. The first scene features Axe going to a movie theater in order to get more acquainted with human culture. The Animorphs are running through logistics, and Jake pointedly says that they are not going to be discussing controllers or Yeerks or Visser 3. They are taking a break, and it's a well-earned break because they destroyed the Kandrona very recently. At this point, Axe thinks to himself that while he would like to learn more about humans, he has to make sure that they do not learn too much about Andalites. He says, "There are things that I could never tell the humans, things that might make them turn against me." Rachel expresses some discomfort at taking a vacation, expressing her preference that they just attack the Yeerks while they're incapacitated, but Jake points out that the Yeerks haven't really shown many signs of weakness since the Kandrona was destroyed. While the Animorphs may have expected to see Yeerks dying in the street and former controllers walking free, none of this has happened. Cut to the movie theater, where Axe makes a scene over some popcorn and refuses to stop talking during the movie. He winds up crawling all over the floor looking for popcorn and stealing candy from kids, so the Animorphs have to leave. Outside the theater, the Animorphs witness their first sign of Yeerk weakness. A man whose Yeerk is apparently dying in his head, ranting about the Yeerks. The Animorphs are excited, but Axe is not, because he knows the truth about how the Yeerks have been handling the catastrophe of the destroyed Kandrona. It's subtly revealed in this book, but I will say it outright because this is a summary. The Yeerks are basically just killing the former hosts of Yeerks who have starved to death. Axe's inner monologue turns to Ciro's kindness and the grand secret that he must keep from his human friends, and I'm gonna spoil this one too because I assume you guys already know. The Andalites are the ones who gave the Yeerks the technology to travel through space, and they are thus responsible for the impact that the Yeerk expansion has had on the galaxy. Subsequent Andalite law has forbidden the sharing of technology and information with other races as to prevent a similar calamity from happening. And so Axe stays silent as the Animorphs celebrate this apparent turn of the tide, knowing that their joy is probably unfounded. The next morning, Axe does his little warrior ritual that he does every morning, contemplating the quandary that his Andalite ethics have placed him in. Elfangor's decision to give the Animorphs the morphing ability was a blatant violation of the law of Ciro's kindness. If Elfangor had lived, he would probably have been disgraced. Axe's thoughts are interrupted by Tobias, who asks a few questions about the morning ritual. The two walk through the woods together to meet up with the rest of the Animorphs, with Tobias keeping watch overhead. Axe tells the reader that sometimes he thinks that Tobias could be a true shorm, an Andalite term for a deep friend who knows all of your secrets, the literal translation of which is tail blade, so I guess they do have a different language that they thought speak in. Axe and Tobias are both cut off from their people, they're both alone, and guess what? Spoiler alert, they're actually kind of related to one another, so this makes nothing but sense. The Axe-Tobias relationship has always been a highlight of this whole series for me. Axe and Marco are also pretty good together. Anyway, Axe laments that his Andalite ethics will prevent him from ever truly having this shorm relationship with Tobias because of all the secrets that he needs to keep, since Andalites are taught that getting close to any alien species is a mistake, so they will never be deep friends, as far as Axe is concerned right now. I want to step back for a second to talk about the conflict that we're being set up for here in terms of Axe's greater character arc. The grand internal conflict that Axe faces is whether he is loyal to Jake or loyal to the Andalites, and more existentially, he doesn't know who he is or where he belongs. And maybe he didn't before this. Axe has never really achieved full warrior status as an Andalite. He always lived in his brother's shadow, and now he finds himself playing an integral part in what appears to be the only active resistance effort against the Yeerk invasion of Earth. Even as he's completely cut off from his own people, he feels he cannot be truly open with the humans he now fights alongside because his Andalite customs forbid it. Customs that were ingrained in his mind from a very early age and reinforced throughout his military education. However, the only reason that he's in this position at all, the only reason that he is even alive instead of starving to death at the bottom of the ocean, is because his brother, his role model, the person whom he has always tried and failed to emulate, violated that custom, violated Andalite law in a massive and pretty severe way when he gave the Animorphs the power to morph. This is a deep conflict, and this will set us up for some great internal struggles going forward, and I just wanted to take a second to appreciate it in all of its entirety before we get to the smaller individual obstacles that make up this greater issue for Axe. The next day, Axe morphs human for a fun little mini mission. He's gonna go to school for the day, posing as Jake's cousin Philip so that he can learn to be a more believable human. The Animorphs do a really poor job of preparing him for this needlessly risky endeavor, so he winds up blowing up his own spot over and over again, but fortunately, any attention that he may have drawn to himself is quickly overshadowed by one of the teachers collapsing to the floor in the middle of class, clawing at his head and having a very loud two-sided argument with himself, apparently. I guess it's a one-sided argument. To the rest of the students, this seems like frightening and erratic behavior, but the Animorphs know what they're looking at. They are witnessing a Yeerk dying of Kandrona starvation. As the man writhes on the floor, Jake runs up and starts comforting him, throwing security to the wind once again as he tells him, "I've been through this, you'll be alright, the Yeerk will die." Fortunately, this lapse of judgment will never have any consequences because Chapman quickly shows up, evacuates the classroom, and murders the teacher on the classroom floor. Brutal. Outside the school, the gang tries to process what they've just seen. Jake is floored by the fact that the Yeerks would rather murder the controllers and their hosts than let them starve to death, blaming himself and the Animorphs for this latest brutality. He's also worried about his brother Tom meeting the same fate as the teacher. As the conversation continues, Jake realizes that Axe must have known that this would happen, which Axe confirms, stating that this is not the first planet that the Yeerks have invaded and they never leave witnesses. Jake does not like that Axe has kept the secret from him, but Axe implies that he didn't tell him because it may have gotten in the way of Jake doing what he needed to do. Destroying the Kandrona was part of the war, a necessary part. Ultimately, Jake tells Axe that he feels like the humans are just pawns in the greater fight between Andalites and the Yeerks, and that the Andalites think that they're too dumb to understand what's going on and too primitive to help in the fight. Axe denies this, but Jake is not assuaged, and he continues to lay into Axe for keeping secrets. Axe confirms that the reason that he was so secretive was because there was a chance that the Animorphs would not have destroyed the Kandrona if they had known that it might endanger Tom, which Jake replies to by stating that Axe doesn't know a thing about humans. What do you guys think would have happened if Axe had been honest about the potential consequences of their mission from the beginning? Jake seems to think that the Animorphs would still have chosen to destroy the Kandrona, at least that's what I get out of this conversation, and I am not sure whether I agree with this. On one hand, the Animorphs are getting pretty good at making difficult decisions at this point. The war is beginning to harden them. The constant existential dread is starting to turn them a bit cynical, so maybe they still would have gone ahead with their plan and destroyed the Kandrona. On the other hand, the Animorphs are still very prone to bouts of human moralizing, and Jake has stated in the past that he's willing to go to pretty great lengths to protect Tom. I don't really know the answer here. I'm curious what you guys think. I think it's a guarantee that we would have had a chapter or two of moral debate in either case, but I do not know where the Animorphs would have landed. So Axe's little field trip to the school ends after Chapman offs a controller right in front of his face, and he returns to the woods where he spends the rest of the day grappling with the fact that he will never be true shorms with the humans. That is to say, he will never be able to be honest with them. This really drives home how alone he is, billions of miles away from any of his kind, and now with his human friends mad at him as well. The next day, Marco shows up to take Axe out for some more human cultural experiences. Marco is very transparent about the fact that Jake has sent him and that his ultimate goal is to try to get more information out of Axe, even inferring that Axe is probably not allowed to interfere with primitive races like humans. This is a sci-fi trope after all, and Marco and Jake read sci-fi presumably, or watch sci-fi movies at least. Play sci-fi video games for sure. Axe is surprised at how close to the mark Marco's, that's difficult. Axe is surprised at how close to the mark Marco's inference is, and he's also touched by the fact that the human response to his deception is not to isolate him, but to continue to open their lives up to him in the hope that he will reciprocate. I've talked about this in other videos. I think one of the themes of these books is that the ability to hope even against the odds is uniquely human. This is on clear display here. This is also another sci-fi trope, but we're not complaining. Axe and Marco head for a human bookstore, making a detour at Marco's house when he realizes that he forgot his wallet. Axe waits for Marco in his living room, playing a game on Marco's dad's computer wherein he corrects all of the obvious errors in some code that he sees on the screen. I wonder if we're gonna hear about this later. After an awkward interaction with Marco's dad, Axe and Marco are once again on the road. The next day, Axe is reading an almanac that Marco purchased him at the bookstore when the rest of the Animorphs show up to confront him. Turns out it wasn't a game on Marco's dad's computer, but a very important piece of software, a project that Marco's dad was working on, designing a program for aiming radio telescopes. It seems that when Axe was playing, he accidentally created some whole new branch of computer engineering and at the same time opened up new ways to do astronomy, whatever that means. I'm sure it means something. I'm not very scientifically inclined. The group is concerned that this inadvertent scientific breakthrough might draw the Yeerk's attention, and it dawns on Axe that he has likely just pushed human science ahead by a century, maybe more. The irony that he's done this in spite of how tight-lipped he is trying to be about Andalite technology is not lost here, and Axe has another revelation. He can use the technology he's just created to contact his homeworld, but he also has to destroy it, or he will be a big bad Ciro's kindness violator just like Elfangor. The group knows something is up and asks Axe what he is thinking, but he tells them that he is not hiding anything at all. Liar. Something I noticed as I read this, and I'm kind of off script here a little bit, is that like Axe always loved Elfangor, and Axe always wanted to emulate Elfangor, and Elfangor completely violated Andalite custom and law when he gave the Animorphs the power to morph, and now here Axe is going in his footsteps again, even though he doesn't mean to do it. Giving the Animorphs the power to morph is probably the best thing that Elfangor has ever done, even though it was so violative of Andalite norms. So maybe Axe is more like his brother than he knows. That night, Axe is running around, eating grass through his hooves, thinking about his ethical conundrum. He really wants to phone home, but if he turns a human radio telescope into a Z-space communicator, he will definitely be breaking Ciro's kindness. I mean, he's kind of already broken the law, but it was an accident, so like, does it count? And what if he just went to the observatory to wipe out the software, but he had a quick sneaky phone call right before he destroyed it? Would that be wrong? Axe is basically convincing himself that he's not violating any ethical rules here, but the reality of the situation is that he is acting unethically. He's hiding things from the Animorphs, who have hidden nothing from him and have only welcomed, protected, and aided him. This is a human interpretation though, and it's clear that at this point Axe is still very much operating within the Andalite framework of morality. I think he's also operating in like a little bit of a teenagery framework of morality. He knows what he wants, and he wants to sort of bend the rules of logic and ethics to support what he wants to do. Axe's grazing takes him pretty close to Cassie's barn, where he actually runs into Cassie in horse morph. They have a chat about what Axe has learned in the almanac, with Axe stating that he understands why Yeerks want to enslave humans. Outside of the fact that there are just so many of us, and Earth is a wonderful, lush planet full of resources, apparently they're also afraid of us. Axe talks about how, given how quickly our technology advances, we should be capable of faster than light travel in about 50 years. Which by my clock means that we've got like 20 years to go. Can't wait. Cassie asks Axe how long it took them to make similar advances, them being the Andalites, and Axe discloses that due to his code as a warrior, he is not allowed to share anything about Andalite technology and is strongly discouraged from even discussing their culture. Cassie points out that Elfangor must have violated that tenet by giving them the power to morph, which Axe replies to by talking about what a big important Prince Elfangor was, much easier to forgive than a young Andalite arist like him. So you gotta ask yourself, what is Axe really worried about here? Does he actually believe that these Andalite cultural customs are as important as he's been raised to believe that they are, or does he just care about preserving his reputation? It seems like he cares more about what other Andalites think of him than he does actually adhering to any kind of principle. Which makes sense, he's a kid. Cassie invites Axe in for dinner, telling him that he can morph Jake. I do not know how someone as prescient as Cassie could make such a critical mistake, but Axe accepts, and soon Axe Jake is pounding chili, yelling, "This is wonderful food!" at Cassie's family. They somehow navigate dinner without raising too much suspicion, and then they watch TV together. Axe appreciates this additional window into human family life, noting the differences between Cassie's family and Jake's family before calling it a night. Cassie walks him out, and they have a brief emotional moment, with Cassie giving Axe a book of quotes, and Axe showing Cassie where in the sky the Andalite homeworld is before he demorphs. As he does so, Cassie lets him know that he is not just an alien to them and that the Animorphs care about him. Back in the woods, Axe continues to fantasize about calling his homeworld, this time thinking about talking to his parents, asking for guidance, even wondering if they'll be proud that he's continuing to fight the Yeerks. He admits to us that he does want the Andalites to think that he's brave, that he's another Elfangor, which validates my suspicion that Axe cares a lot more about his reputation among the Andalites than he does about actually upholding their traditions, which makes sense because, as Cassie just pointed out, he's a kid. He's kind of just been doing what he's told up until this point. It's more important to Axe to have the approval of those that he respects and admires than it is for him to uphold Andalite customs, because he probably doesn't really understand the Andalite customs. I know that when I was a kid, I didn't have a very well-formed sense of values, but I definitely cared way too much about what others thought of me. I'd imagine the same is true for a lot of us. So, unable to sleep, Axe seeks out Tobias. He asks Tobias if Tobias considers Axe a friend, and he's surprised at how quickly and how certainly Tobias is able to answer. Of course they're friends. They're probably the two strangest creatures on the planet. Tobias says that he's a boy trapped in a hawk's body, and Axe is this crazy four-eyed half-deer, half-scorpion alien, so they're the weirdest ones, but Visitor 3 is a Yeerk inside a freaky four-eyed half-deer, half-scorpion, centaur-looking alien, which is actually a step above what Axe has got going for him, but I get the general idea. Anyway, Axe asks if Tobias will keep a secret, and after swearing on the memory of Elfangor, whom Tobias has weird feelings for even though he can't explain why, Axe divulges his plan. So in the grand scheme of Axe's arc, which we know takes him from elitist and aloof Andalite to human-loving Animorph, what direction do we think that confiding in Tobias pushes him in? On the one hand, he is committing to follow through with his plan, which is probably more aligned with the Andalite half of things, but on the other, he is confided in one of the humans, insofar as Tobias is a human. His body isn't human. I guess his soul isn't really human either. It's like half Andalite. We can call this right in the middle, I suppose. The next morning, Axe assumes his Northern Harrier morph. He's flying with Tobias, and Tobias asks why Cassie is a better morpher than Axe, and Axe begrudgingly states that Cassie has talent and that morphing is not Axe's talent. Just something funny. As they fly, Axe notes how hard Tobias's life as a Nothlit must be, and he wonders why Tobias has never asked if Axe has any information that might help him resume his human form. He reasons that Tobias might think that Axe would refuse to answer, or worse, might lie to him. I think Tobias's situation is actually just a little more complicated than Axe realizes, although I don't fault Axe for assuming that Tobias's reasoning has something to do with him. As they approach the observation tower, Tobias asks if Axe is going to tell him what they're doing, which indicates that Axe actually hasn't told him his plan. He must have just asked if Tobias would escort him to the radio telescope. Tobias is not an idiot though, and I think he's probably inferred what they are getting up to, at least broadly. They reach the observatory whatever place, and Axe flies into the main building alone to demorph. He chooses to stay in his Andalite form because a quick escape would be very difficult to make from human morph, since he'd have to go to Andalite and then back to bird, and he's already pretty tired from morphing and flying. And then Axe makes his way to the main observatory room, where he uses a computer to modify the telescope's software, and in about 10 minutes is making an outbound call to the Andalite homeworld. Axe's call is answered by some Andalite general, who asks a few questions about Elfangor's status and the Earth invasion. Once Axe divulges that Elfangor gave a small group of humans the power to morph, this Andalite general disappears, and he's replaced by a very important Andalite general, the head of the Andalite Council, Lirim Arapoth Terrace. Lirim asks Axe to confirm what he just told the other guy, and Axe does so, before admitting that he also broke Andalite law by modifying Earth equipment to make this call to them. After being chastised, Axe goes to bat for humanity a bit, stating that humans are not the enemies of Andalites, and that Elfangor did what was right by giving them the morphing technology, without which they would stand no chance of survival. Lirim sternly reiterates the story of Ciro's kindness before asking Axe again, was it really Elfangor who gave him the morphing technology? You know, Axe, the Andalites really need heroes right now, and Elfangor is one of them. It would be a shame if Elfangor had to be disgraced because he gave them this tech. Axe astutely takes the hint, and he amends his previous testimony, telling Lirim that he was mistaken. It was actually he, Axe, who gave them the morphing power. Lirim forgives Axe on behalf of the council, stating that what's done is done, and that perhaps Lirim is too old to see that in the end, this may work out for the best. He then commands Axe to resist the Yeerks, but to give the humans no information and no technology. He states that it may be a while before the Andalites are able to make their way to Earth, and Axe starts to hear Tobias faintly warning him of some approaching danger before Lirim tells Axe that they have his father on the line. Axe ignores Tobias in favor of speaking to his dad, who basically charges him with killing Visser III in order to avenge Elfangor in some apparent Andalite ritual before the screen goes black, and Axe is rudely interrupted by a human controller holding a Dracon beam. Dracon beam Yeerk is monologuing at Axe when Tobias attacks him from above, but the controller is able to hold on to the Dracon beam, and he trains it on both of them. To everyone's surprise, he then places it on the floor, putting himself at the mercy of what he believes to be two Andalites. He explains to them that his Yeerk lover was also killed by Visser III, and then illuminates them on the state of play post-Kandrona destruction. It appears that there is some widespread starvation going on among Yeerk ranks, with important Yeerks being shuttled back and forth to the pool ship every 3 days. This Yeerk's lover was not among the important Yeerks, and he had to watch her die. As it turns out, this Yeerk is willing to let the Andalites go on the chance that they may wind up killing Visser III for him. He gives them the location and the time that Visser III will next feed in his Andalite body, like graze out in a field somewhere, and Tobias and Axe leave. That's my baby and my wife in the background. You're gonna hear that too. It kind of is what it is today. Yeah, I just want to point out the existence of this Yeerk, who's like girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, was destroyed. He must not be the only one. It implies that there are probably many, right? Like, if the Yeerks have got relationships with one another and they're dying and starving to death, there have got to be a lot of really unhappy Yeerks right now. Still very lucky for the Animorphs. Because that is twice in like 5 books that the Animorphs have escaped certain doom because a subordinate Yeerk really doesn't like Visser III. It's almost as if this impetuous bastard has acted so callously to his underlings that he's getting in the way of his own success. Unless I'm mistaken, this is also the first time that we hear of Yeerks having true like familial affection for one another. We've been making slow progress towards humanizing the Yeerks. I use that term abstractly. We're talking about alien races here, but this is another step in that direction. This Yeerk felt love for a being. That being was killed, and now he wants revenge. Strange parallels between him and Axe here, although I'd wager Axe is too propagandized by his Andalite betters to realize it. That evening, Prince Jake calls a meeting in Cassie's barn. As Axe waits for everyone to arrive, he laments that his reputation is now forever tarnished in the eyes of the Andalites. Elfangor is a hero, and Axe is the foolish young Arith who gave humans the power to morph. I'd imagine that this must be kind of liberating for Axe, who I've decided on this reread definitely cares much more about what Andalites think of him than he does about the principles of Andalite culture and society. So like, now that they all think that he is, you know, a fool, he's kind of free of that, right? Axe also wonders about Lyrim a bit, because Lyrim was present at the war for the Hork-Bajir homeworld, and if Lyrim had given the Hork-Bajir better technology to fight the Yeerks, would the Hork-Bajir be a free people today rather than slaves of the Yeerks? Would that have been the right thing to do? I'd add that beyond just being Yeerk slaves, the Hork-Bajir are Yeerk weapons who have certainly made the Andalites' fight against the Yeerks much more difficult. So like, probably Lyrim should have given them some technology, right? Axe also seems pretty fatalistic at this point about what he views as his inevitable fight with Visser III. As far as Axe is concerned, he will lose, or at the very least, die in the effort. So the gang all arrives for this meeting that Jake has called, and they quickly confront Axe about the fact that not only is he obviously keeping secrets from them, he has somehow roped Tobias into his schemes. Axe, who is in human morph, quickly becomes overwhelmed at their berating and yells at them that he can't answer their questions and that he has to follow the rules. Cassie asks, "Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that, that's why?" And Axe elaborates a bit, telling them that Andalites can't give tech to aliens, but he can't tell them why. The group assumes that it's about power or control, but Cassie deftly infers that it's probably more about guilt and shame. Axe confirms that once the Andalites were kind when they should not have been kind, but he won't elaborate, and Jake pretty much expels him from the group at this point. You can't be an Animorph and tell lies. Axe accepts this, telling them that they wouldn't have been together much longer anyway, and walks away. In case anyone missed the subtext here, Axe is convinced that he has to go do a seppuku in the form of throwing himself violently at Visser III. The next morning, Axe is doing a modified warrior's ritual. I guess this one is for warriors who know that they're about to go into battle and probably die. Tobias shows up to Axe's consternation and offers to help, or to bring the others to help with the assassination plot. Axe refuses because he's worried that Jake will forbid him, which confuses Tobias and me because Axe is already refusing Jake's commands left, right, and center in this book by refusing to divulge his precious Andalite secrets, and also by going on secret side quests to have chats with Andalites. Axe makes Tobias promise not to tell the others what he's up to, and he embarks on what he believes will be his final mission. He goes to the spot in the woods that Esplin is the Yeerk from earlier, told him about. He morphs Rattlesnake, and he waits.
What's good, guys? It's me, the editor. You know I like to fill these videos in with like B-roll from the Animorphs show, the like really terrible, cheesy 90s adaptation that I enjoy enough for what it is. And the like footage from the show is often super different than it is in the book because of like their extreme budgetary constraints and like a lot of plot consolidations and stuff like that. There also are a lot of books that just never got an episode. There's like 12 episodes or something. Anyway, the Alien did get an episode, but they consolidated the plot to absolute fuck, so obviously a lot of stuff's very different. I'm not putting the fight between Axe and Visser III in this video, but I strongly encourage you guys to go watch it yourself because it is just very bad. You can tell every like problem with the budget shines through in the fight scene between Axe and Visser III. They do not use their tails when they fight. They don't use their tail blades at all. They just kind of grapple with their hands. It's all like blurred motion, so you can't really tell what's going on. And the use of green screen with the Animorphs battle morphs is just, you gotta see it to believe it. I'm gonna throw a link into the description. I think these are all on YouTube. Watch that episode or just watch the fight. It's really funny. I'm not putting it in here because I would want to put the whole thing, and whatever like Irish media company owns these things, they claim the videos every time, which is why I have to like butcher the shit out of them. And I just don't want to go through it because I don't want to cut this up. I want you to see it in its entirety. Go watch it.
Visser III soon shows up with his usual coterie of guards, and he begins to graze. Axe successfully delivers a couple of poisonous bites to Visser III, and then he slithers away, demorphing as he goes for some reason, and anticipating an imminent Dracon beam shot. When suddenly, the Animorphs emerge from the woods in various battle morphs to save the day. At the appearance of Tobias, Axe confronts him about breaking his promise, which Tobias justifies by saying that Jake is his prince too, and Jake ordered Tobias to tell him what Axe was up to. Their conversation is cut short by the ongoing battle battle around them, and before long, the Visser's honor guard has fled, leaving the Animorphs alone with the abomination. Tobias lets the Animorphs know that he witnesses the Yeerk slug crawl out of the Andalite's ear, and Axe runs up to the now empty Andalite host of Visser 3, who we know is Alaran, and whom I will be referring to as such. Alaran asks Axe to kill him before Visser 3 returns, and Axe tells him that he's basically already dead from the rattlesnake venom, but Alaran replies that there are half a dozen bug fighters likely already en route. They're gonna keep the Andalite body alive, they're gonna save him, and they're gonna put Visser 3 back in there. He tries to bring his tail blade to his own throat, like, you know, to do the thing, but the venom has left him too weak. He tells Axe that his name is Alaran Semitur Koras, one of my favorite characters in like all the books, I think. And he asks Axe to tell his family that he loves them, and with that the Animorphs abandon the Andalite to get out of there before reinforcements arrive. I hate this decision on so many levels. Alaran was begging them to kill him. He wanted to do it himself, but he was too weak. He was physically trying to. What on earth was stopping them from granting this wish? If Axe or Jake were too honorable to do it, then I would at least expect Marco to step in and just squish his little Andalite head like a grape in his big old gorilla hands. I'm also really surprised that the Yeerk reinforcements showed up, kept Alaran alive, and just like found Visser 3's Yeerk and put him back in his brain. Given how many malcontents Visser 3 apparently has as subordinates, how rapacious and ambitious the Yeerks have been conveyed as so far, what is stopping an enterprising young Yeerk from infesting Alaran himself? He would then get access to all of Visser 3's morphs. He would have enough power to just sort of force his subordinates into place. Headcanon time. What if another Yeerk does take Visser 3's place and we've got like a Paul McCartney car crash situation here? I will have to flesh this new fan theory out once I get through the rest of the series. I wonder if anyone's written about this before.
What's good, guys? It's me, the editor. In hindsight, watching this now, I guess probably the one thing that is keeping the Yeerks from, like, assuming Visser 3's Andalite host is that the Council of 13 would have something to say about it. And they do, like, still seem to wield some amount of, like, power and command over the Yeerks, even though the Yeerks are kind of largely conveyed as these, like, ambitious and self-serving and individualistic sort of, like, beings that don't really care too much about the common good. So, yeah, I guess it's the Council of 13. But I still think it's possible that a different Yeerk takes Visser 3's body, and there's a grand conspiracy to cover it up. And no one can tell me that it's not possible, so.
2 days later, the gang meets in the woods, and Axe tells them the story of Ciro's kindness. We'll recap it anyway here, even though I've already spoiled it. Ciro was a great Andalite warrior and scientist in charge of the first Andalite expedition to the Yeerk homeworld. Ciro felt sorry for the Yeerks, who were intelligent, but only had access to Ged hosts on their homeworld, so he gave them the technology of space travel. I don't know what on earth this Andalite thought he was doing, because the Yeerk's problem wasn't their lack of access to outer space. The problem was their lack of access to suitable hosts, so go fucking figure, as soon as they got off their desolate little rock, they started enslaving other species. Like, the Geds are depicted as slow and stupid and with very dull senses. Did Ciro not anticipate that the Yeerks might want a better body with which they could fully experience all the pleasures now at their disposal? Also, if the Andalites have such a problem with the Yeerks, like, going off and enslaving other races, why didn't they have a problem with the Yeerks enslaving the Geds on their homeworld? How did they not see this coming? Anyway, the Yeerks quickly enslave another race called the Nahara, whom we don't hear a ton about after this, followed by the Hork-Bajir, and then Taxons and other planets. Axe states that billions of free people have been enslaved or destroyed because of the Yeerks, which implies a scale of universal invasion that is surprising, given how small the assault on Earth has been so far, and how important we are told that Earth is to the invasion. Also, if the Yeerks are interested in humans because of their numbers, but they've already enslaved billions, that implies that there are like a few hundred additional races under Yeerk subjugation, given the population of Earth was around 1 billion at the time of this book's publication. I think there's a little bit of inconsistency in the scale at play here, although I welcome your comments explaining how this is possible. So after Axe puts it all on the table, Marco points out that Elfangor broke this very law, which Axe replies to by letting them know that he will be taking the blame for this transgression. To Axe's surprise, the human Animorphs do not respond to these revelations with anger. Instead, they seem appreciative that Axe finally told them the truth. And more than that, they seem to understand his reasoning. Cassie tells Axe that their philosophy is that just because sharing tech didn't work once, doesn't mean that you should give up hope on ever achieving cross-species companionship with every race in the galaxy. There's that human hope again. Jake reinforces that they have no desire to break any Andalite laws or take any more Andalite technology, but what they want most of all is just for Axe to trust them and to tell them the truth. And Marco states that if the Andalites want a species to cruise the stars with, humans might be the ones. This doesn't make a ton of sense to Axe, will take a bit longer to get over all the propagandizing he underwent during his military education, but Tobias puts it this way. The Andalites are fighting for freedom, the same thing that humans want. This seems to finally get through to Axe, who understands that he will still have a lot of splaining to do once he gets back home, but who seems more okay with that fact now. Marco asks Axe a final question. How does he eat? And Axe lets him know that he absorbs nutrients through his hooves as he runs. Axe looks at Tobias, expecting him to ask the question that he suspects Tobias has been holding on to, that being whether or not there is a way out of his Nothlit prison, but Tobias never asks it. The book ends with Axe stating that neither he nor his shorm Tobias is capable of smiling, but that they can look at each other, understand each other, and smile anyway. I'd say there's a lot to unpack here, but we've kind of been doing that as we go, and I think that this is pretty straightforward. There's a layer of irony to the fact that it's Tobias who's able to finally get through to Axe. Axe thinks that he's warming up to human sensibilities, but the actual fact is that Tobias is closer to Andalite than Axe knows. Maybe this is why Tobias knows the right words to say to make Axe understand these things that threaten how he has been raised to see the universe. Axe and Tobias are both very unique. They're both alone in their own ways, but they not only share Andalite DNA, or, whatever, soul DNA. Axe is Tobias's uncle. They're less alone together than either of them thinks. Okay, let's grade this bad boy. I am going to give this book a 7 for plot. It is interesting enough. It's cool that Axe gets to talk to some homeworld Andalites. I love the Axe-Tobias moments, and I like that we get to talk to Alarin. But at the end of the day, the Animorphs are more or less in the same place as they were before the book started. Most of the events of the book are way more significant to Axe and his character development than anything else. With this in mind, I've given the book a 6 for significance. Like I said, the Animorphs kind of tread water here. You'd think it would be more significant given that they get Alarin a few minutes of freedom, but it goes nowhere. For character though, solid 10. This is our true introduction to Axe. We are set up beautifully for his arc through the rest of the series, and I really love all the growth that Axe undergoes throughout these books, so yeah, 10. For the writing, K.A. wrote it, inoffensive, gets the job done, 8. That puts us at a final score of 7.7, making this book number 6 in our ranking of the 8 books that we've read so far, and that sounds about right to me. Okay, life and channel updates. A few things. New Year's resolutions. I am prioritizing this YouTube channel this year. I know that I talk a lot in the past about how maybe I'll one day be a consistent YouTuber. Realistically, my time is limited, right? Got a full-time job, watch the baby more or less full-time as well. I cook every night for my family, and I clean up after my, all my fucking minutes are taken. But I do have enough time to do some things. And I think my problem is that I kind of spread myself really thin and I don't ever wind up really focusing on one thing. I am focusing on and prioritizing this YouTube channel this year. So there will be more output. It might not always be like Animorphs summaries like I've been doing lately. There are a lot of different video ideas that I want to do. One of them is, I've seen a few videos like this. I want to try to solve an Agatha Christie mystery in real time. I love Agatha Christie. She's one of my favorite authors. She's in my top 3 or 4 probably. I never am able to solve them, but I've always had this fantasy where if I really put my mind to it, I would totally be able to solve one of them. So I want to read one and just do a recap after every chapter, going over my notes that I will meticulously take and see if I can figure one out. I've seen other people do this on YouTube. It always looks really interesting and I want to give it a shot. So if that's something you're interested in, keep an eye out. Other ideas, I guess, I read a lot of books. It's not just Animorphs, and I may start talking about those more. Secondly, my wife's pregnant again. Yay! We're having a little girl, and she is due in the middle of June, and this is very exciting to me. This also is part of why I have been just my hands have been super full. I don't know if any of you have been pregnant before or have had pregnant people that you're somewhat responsible for. The first trimester is really difficult. It's tough on the body. You don't feel very good. You're nauseous, all of this other stuff. Second trimester is good, but then the third one, you're very pregnant and just physically not able to do as many things. So my, household duties have increased substantially. But anyway, the New Year's resolution is still happening. I am still going to focus on the output of this channel, and you are going to see more of me this year than you did last year. So don't worry about that. I just wanted to share the new baby news because I'm excited about it, and we're telling other people about it now, and I figured I might as well tell you guys about it. Third thing, if anyone's interested, I do have a second YouTube channel that is I wouldn't even call it vlog content because I don't fucking leave the house really very often, but it's just got a lot of just me sort of talking about my life and other things that are on my mind. It gets no views, it has no subscribers whatsoever. If you're interested in it, I'm gonna just put a link in the description just because. No reason. Don't watch it if you don't want to. My real goal for the second YouTube channel is just that, like, I think it'd be fun and interesting for my kids to have a window of, like, me at this time in my life, because I know I would really appreciate having that kind of window into my dad's life. And, you know, he's not around, so I can't really talk to him anymore. So yeah, just trying to do something that I think might be cool in the future. But if you're interested in it, you should go and watch it. You know, I'm so charming, and it's so nice to watch me on your screens here. So that's all I've got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for sticking with me this last year. I know I'm like the least consistent YouTuber in the world, but I am going to be better at making videos this year. I'm focusing and I'm prioritizing, and other shit is getting put on the back burner for this and for you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Happy New Year.